as it's thinking, and now it says we are live. So I'm very happy to be in the studio and to have a very special guest with me this time around, Cherie Mylordis. And Cherie, welcome. So good to have you here with me.
Thank you for having me, Sue, and hello to your amazing audience. It's really lovely to spend Thursday night with you all.
Thank you. Thank you. So, Cherie, we met, I'm not sure how long ago, it's a number of years, and we connected on LinkedIn.
COVID.
Yes, because we spent a lot of time online checking up on each other, making sure we were traveling okay through COVID. I do remember that. But we first connected on LinkedIn. So we've shared a bit of a journey together for a number of years now, and catch up when we're in each other's sphere geographically, because you're based in Sydney, I'm here in Melbourne. So yeah, it's been a great journey, and I think over the years we've built pretty strong friendship too. So, and a support for each other. So
we have, and I think there's a lot of
really
trust.
Appreciate it.
Oh, thank you as well. I think there's really a lot of trust and goodwill and collaboration there, which is lovely.
Yes, agreed, totally. Tonight, I just want to set the scene before I actually go into asking you some questions, and to give context for those that maybe haven't been part of the series that I've been doing to now. And first of all, I want to introduce myself for starters. So I'm your host for tonight. I'm Sue Matheson, CEO Catalyst, and also certified integrity game coach and mentor. And yes, I've talked about Cherie and the friendship that we've developed, our relationship that initially started on LinkedIn. But Cherie, you are a work futurist, you're leadership, innovation and transformation coach as well. And certainly over the years that I have got to know you, I see someone who's like, you do exo sprints, you do amazing stuff with a variety of organizations, not only based here in Australia, but globally. You've done a lot of work overseas. Without reading off a script, I wanted to sort of share what I've observed. And I see someone who's really generous with their time, absolutely wanting to make an impact on leadership. And I know probably a couple of years ago now, you did a very in-depth survey of leaders globally. I think fair proportion were based here in Australia, but it was when you broke down your statistics, there was a significant number as well overseas. So, and out of that came a lot of work. And then you launched Nextgenify, which is your, would it be fair to say, brand that you're focusing on at the moment? So that's what I see. What would you like to add in terms of what do you want people to know about you?
Well, thank you, Sue. You've got a great memory about the research that I did and the findings. And you're right, it was a big proportion of people were from Australia, the leaders that I interviewed, but there were actually leaders representing 24 countries. So it was an amazing experience to do that research. And so I started at Nextgenify in about 2018. And then I've evolved my work, really looking at helping, I guess, leaders and organizations achieve extraordinary outcomes is really what underpins what I do. And it's all about being purpose-driven. And I think it stems from the fact that I've spent decades, I guess, across a wide range of industries and sectors, and I've been very fortunate that I've been at the forefront of new disciplines. So I was at the forefront of change management, and then agile, and then design thinking, and then innovation, the sprints that you talked about. And so I've been really fortunate to be at that place each time, but that's also quite daunting. And, imposter syndrome can kick in, and it can be hard to navigate. And so what I'm really about is helping people who are ambitious, they're aspiring to achieve something, to help them not have to navigate, all the things that I've had to navigate. How might I help them, take a straighter path, and be more intentional about how they show up as leaders who want to have some kind of impact, whatever that might be. Share those insights, share the wisdom that I've gained, and encourage them to step up and get a little bit out of their comfort zone too, because that's really where we learn and grow.
Yeah. And I've seen, so not live, but I've seen some of the recordings that you've had online of presentations that you've done, and you certainly add an element of fun to creating that impact with people that you're working with.
I mean, I think it's really important to have fun, and I think we try and do that too, because you don't want to take yourself too seriously, but also we learn more when we're not feeling, stressed and on edge. So we're going to take it in if we enjoy the experience.
Yeah, so true. What is one thing that people might not know about you from social media or LinkedIn that you would feel comfortable sharing?
Oh, this is a nice surprise. I like having surprise questions. Think on my feet. Let me see. I think one that I don't often talk about, but I'm happy to share, is that I'm the first person on both sides of my family to achieve a university education.
Right.
And so what that meant was I didn't have any role models. Like I naturally was interested in school, interested in reading, interested in learning. And so I was keen to go to university, but I didn't have anyone helping me with that pathway. What might I study? I studied computer science because I was quite a logical thinker and I did well at school in that sort of area. But I didn't really think I was going to be a deep technical specialist in something. But that was a stepping stone to consulting. So, I think what that has done, though, is it's meant that I've had to be really aware, because I never had anyone guiding me. I never had any role models to look up to. And so I've had to always have my antenna up and, scan the landscape and try and pick things up. And so I think naturally become that curator and that observer. And I think that's sort of underpinned how I show up to this day. I look at all these options and tools and scenarios, and I think, I'll take a bit of this and a bit of that, and I'll make it my own. So there you go. There's a fun fact.
Yeah, nice. Well, I didn't even know that. So
there you go.
Yeah. So thank you for sharing that. And I like how you were saying, it's you keep your radar up and you're looking for bringing things in. It's almost like you've become the baker and you're creating your own recipe. And
well, I didn't have anyone telling me. I didn't have anyone saying you should go about it this way. So I just had to figure it out.
No, that's fantastic. And I think that sharing that story is a really lovely platform from which to launch into what is the topic that we were going to discuss tonight. And I'm just going to put up the question, but then I want to explain where that's come from. So the question we're going to tease out is, who benefits from your success, but from the perspective of giving and serving? So the framework for this comes from playing the integrity game. And the integrity game sits in the third of these three pillars of leadership. And it's really about making accountability non-threatening. And often when we ask people, what does integrity mean to them, there's generally one of two answers. It's being consistent when no one's looking and being your word are generally the two answers that are given. And this series that I've been working through that has been built around playing the integrity game takes that a step further and suggests that to build resilience, to build that integrity into our life is a little bit like a building that has integrity, in that it does the job it's designed to do. So with a building, we don't want it collapsing in a storm. We don't want it falling over because suddenly there's a big wind. So it's about retrofitting ourselves as individuals, but also our organizations, and building that integrity into our lives. And so we've been working through this 10-point model. And in this conversation, we're down to this last, the 10th point, which is about giving and serving. And that's just setting the scene of where does this fit into the framework. So I'll leave that there. So to kick us off, Cherie, from that perspective of giving and serving, your own experience and the breadth of experience that you've had, why do you think it's so important for us to really consider how are we giving and serving and who is benefiting from our success?
Well, I think we should all try and leave things a little bit better in some way, right? And I don't think it's about, being known for it even. I think it's about just that fulfillment that you get from contributing beyond potentially the day-to-day.
Yeah.
So I think it really is underpinned by that. And I like the fact that on that slide that you just shared, it links back to purpose, because if you can bring those two together, rather than, give and serve randomly, if you can bring it back to what you really care about, what really matters to you, then it will have extra significance. It will fuel you and it will be palpable to others. And so, I think true leadership is not about the fancy job, the fancy title, the status. It's really about that service and making a difference, that impact. That's what real leaders are about. And the most enduring leaders are those who lift others up. So it's not just about you. And so if you lift others up in the direction of this purpose, so therefore you're attracting people that potentially you have some common ground with, then that can really amplify it, in my opinion, and create that ripple effect. And so when we can pay it forward in some way, we can amplify that success beyond our goals. And that's even how movements begin, when something is, really gets that traction.
Yeah, I love that. And I think to embracing that, if we practice it, we become a role model then to show others how to exercise that mindset, how to live out a life that is integrated between what am I doing, but integrated back into purpose, and almost helping them to discover their purpose. Because I guess that's the beauty of it too, is that they don't have to be exactly the same as us.
No, they don't. It doesn't have to be, there needs to be some kind of connection there, some sort of common ground, I think. But someone could still have a very different ambition or purpose or direction that they're going in. But I think by serving others, it anchors us back to our purpose, and it reminds us why we do what we do. It keeps our ego in check, and it connects us to something bigger than ourselves. And so, yes, it's about that role modeling as well. And we hear so much today about, disengaged workers and the quiet quitting and the bare minimum Mondays, and how do people show up but do the minimum? But if you can connect people to purpose, if there's something that will light them up, that just disappears because people have that intrinsic motivation towards what they're doing. And that's where, as that role model, if you show that authentically, that's where, you know, with integrity, then, you know, people see that, they feel that. And so that again rubs off on others, in my opinion.
Yeah. No, I love that. That's 100% agree. And I think there's so much depth to that. It gives meaning to what we're doing. And how much do you think it makes a difference then when the going gets tough?
Great question. We hear a lot about burnout at the moment, don't we? People are, you know, in all sectors, especially in the medical profession, but also in the corporate world, we hear a lot about burnout. And I actually have a close contact. We did a program together. She's based in the US. Her name's Cara Hauser, and she wrote a book about From Burnt Out to Lit Up. Right. And one of the premises of her book is that purpose, that passion, because, you know, we fuel ourselves. We get that natural energy, that lift when we're working on something that really matters to us. And so it doesn't feel like such a grind. Whereas if we're just slogging it out and it's just not engaging, it's hard work, it's not really energizing us or motivating us, that's where we're more likely to get that real burnout. Yeah. Now, of course, in either way, like I'm passionate about what I do and I work some pretty long hours because sometimes I just get so into something and my husband will go, hey, do you think you should take a break? Like, yeah, right. So, you know, it is important to have those checks and balances in place and the exercise and everything. But I think you're far less likely to get burnt out when it's something that really fuels you, that you feel passionate about. Yeah. No, that's and I love the connection there, like with the motivation, and that and what you talked about, that you naturally all go into a flow because it's everything you're doing is so aligned, so it doesn't feel like work. That's so right. It's kind of always on my mind. I'm like, oh, what's the next thing I could do? Oh, there's another podcast. I just get all excited about it.
That's great. So before we go on to my next question, is there anything else that you would like to add to sort of the importance of having that mindset of giving and serving?
I would. I think when you see CEOs show up with purpose and it's really authentic, I think that is one of the most powerful traits that a CEO can show. And again, it comes back to that integrity, right? You know, we talk about organizations have to have a purpose, a vision, a mission statement, whatever. But are they words on a page, or do you actually live it? And when a CEO lives it, it's absolutely extraordinary. And so, and that then inspires that loyalty, that trust, that connection, whether it be internally with people that want to work for you, or it could even be customers that want to buy for you. And one example that comes to mind is the former CEO of Mirvac, Susan Lloyd-Hurwitz. Okay. She had the drumbeat of talking about purpose, and it was clearly she just believed about, you know, what Mirvac was striving to achieve. And I think their purpose was reimagine urban life. And so there were layers underneath that in terms of, you know, quality of life, but sustainability and all of those things. But there was a particular initiative that she launched that really just stayed with me because it was so clear. It was just a few words, but those words were, the initiative was called A House with No Bills. And I just thought that a house with no bills. Okay. And so they were working on initiatives where they could build a house as part of their offering that had no bills. Now, just a house with no bills, 5 words, right? Yeah. But what does that conjure up? What does that conjure up for you? If you heard this initiative, we're striving for a house with no bills. What does that say?
Well, incredibly well designed, like it would be, just made from the materials that it's made from would have to have an impact. Like it just starts to Yeah, very creative in its design and very
Yeah.
interesting concept. Yeah.
That's right. And so if you were working for that company and had an opportunity to contribute towards that, that's like a big, bold, audacious goal, right? Imagine if we could build houses with no bills. Like, who wouldn't want to live in a house with no bills, right?
Yeah,
and so if you're
absolutely.
working there, it's like, I feel so proud because I'm contributing towards this initiative of making a difference, right?
Yeah.
And it might almost feel impossible, but even if you only get 70% there, that's still like worth striving for.
Yeah.
And so this is the sort of thing that I feel like it just makes such a difference when you show up with that integrity, that wanting to give and serve, and linking it to purpose. And it can be a really bold purpose that almost feels impossible, or maybe it does feel impossible, but it's worth striving for, right?
Yeah.
And so even if you don't fully get there, that doesn't mean you failed, because you're going to make progress. And so this is where I feel it's just so powerful to show up in this way if you are a leader at any level, but most importantly, if you're a CEO leading an organization, that could really be a guiding light that attracts talent. People would be loyal, they would be passionate, they'd want to show up on that Monday morning. They wouldn't be doing that bare minimum Monday, would they?
No, not at all. It's like, get me there, I want to be there.
Yeah, what's the next thing we can do? And there would be a sense of autonomy and shared ownership, and that's what good looks like in terms of leadership and culture.
Yeah. And I love that example that you've given. And I mean, I can feel the energy and coming through the screen and your passion about that as well. And I totally agree that who'd want to be not in that environment, like the enthusiasm, the motivation. So with that in mind, what stops people, do you think, from embracing this mindset of giving and serving and understanding the importance of it? What do you think gets in the way?
Well, I think the obvious starting point would be that disconnection from the purpose, the why. Why are we doing it, right? And so if it feels like it's not for a deeper reason and it's a drain on your time, it's a drain on your energy, it's a drain on your resources, like that's the instinct, I guess. It's like, well, why would you do that when you don't have to? You're not being paid for it. You know, it's that sort of more shallow mindset that we should only do what we need to do and then, you know, clock the hours, clock on, clock off. It's that kind of mentality, right? That we just do the minimum. Whereas when there's that deeper purpose, that is what makes people, you know, feel that there's a reason. And what always happens when you are giving and serving is you often gain more than you even give, right? It becomes very fulfilling and rewarding. But that's very hard for people to grasp unless they've actually experienced it. So, you know, when you go and volunteer and you go, well, why would you give up one Saturday a month to go and help animals or whatever you want to do, right? It feels like, oh, wouldn't you want to just go to the footy, you know? So these things are counterintuitive, but what actually happens is when you have that mindset and that approach, you gain often even more than you give. So it's a two-way thing. It's not a one-way thing where you're just giving and serving. You're gaining as well.
Yeah. It is, how much do you think a lack of courage or fear plays a role in that, and that not even willing to put a toe in the water and at least try?
Absolutely. So there can be that imposter syndrome kicking in. Am I good enough to offer this to whatever forum or channel that I'm expected? It can be that fear of scarcity. So, you know, I'm too busy for this. It would diminish what I can do in my main arena. So that fear of spreading yourself too thin, I think, would be a common one. And maybe it's a bit of cultural conditioning as well, where it's like you see that people are trying to climb that ladder, get the status, get the title, get up the hierarchy. You know, you hear of people that then they pull the ladder up. They're not helping others climb the ladder, right? So, you know, if that's what you've seen, then again, you haven't got the role models to inspire you to do that and to see the deeper meaning and benefit and fulfillment that gets out of it. So I think there's all of those things that can come into the mix. But that lack of clarity, I think, can also really play a role, which again is that full circle going back to the purpose, the why. Who are you serving? Why? What would the benefit be? Is it clear what that will contribute, or is it just a bit of a vague thing that hasn't really been clearly defined or described? And maybe that's up to you to shape it, right? To sort of go in and shape that thing and make it something worthwhile.
Yeah. And do you think there's a difference then if someone wants to, is the driver behind that? So again, it comes back to reinforcing saying about if there's a disconnection from purpose, people are more likely to not want to be giving and serving, not want to be spending time or giving up time for others. Then that drive in that situation could also be an element of just being ego-driven.
Yes, I think so.
And so there's this, I'm owning in it for me, and that's where it just stays very surface level. So if it's, and I wonder too how much people just aren't aware that maybe they're allowing their ego to drive them, and then when they don't feel fulfilled because it's not aligned to their purpose, they go, oh, why am I going to do this? Wasting my time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm busy, I've got too much on my plate, I'm juggling. But sometimes when you carve out something like this, it can energize you and it can make you structure your time more effectively. So it may even have the opposite effect. I mean, I think we've all had bad bosses, right? I don't like the term boss, and I always cringe if someone ever says I'm their boss. I'm like, no, I'm not. I just don't like the term boss. But we've all seen and had bad bosses, and there's one sort of archetype, I think, of a bad boss, which is the one that's always, they're never around. They're perhaps a bit of a ghost boss. They're never around, when the hard work is happening, but they show up to take the credit or to point the finger if there's blame, right? You know, and that's sort of, again, one of those more old-fashioned archetypes of the boss, the person that's in control and takes charge. And this comes back from, I think, 100 years ago, we had, when we created organizations, it was to instruct people to perform repetitive tasks, typically in a factory or in a, some sort of environment where things were made or built, and it was very repetitive. And so the people at the top had to make those big decisions. They were the clever people, and they gave out those instructions and told everybody else what to do. And those other people didn't have a say in it. They weren't expected to have a voice or have any intelligence. They just had to perform these repetitive tasks. And so a lot of those sort of ways of managing stem back from there. That's where the triangle org chart came from. And that's where, the putting people in a box came from. Whereas now we're wanting to, we want people to think, use their brains, contribute. And yet we're still sometimes hanging on to those old ways because, well, that's the way we've always done it. Whereas if we create that shared ownership and a bit more autonomy, and it doesn't mean you have to throw out the org chart completely, but if leaders rethink how they show up, and again, it comes to the top, right? The CEOs have to role model this, set the direction, set the vision, set the challenge, and then invite people to contribute to it. So, and there's that giving and serving, right? You're giving up a bit of that status and authority. You're serving people to say, well, what do you need to contribute? So you're that servant leader. You're saying, what do you need to contribute and to perform? And how can I remove blockers? How can I create connections? How can I enable you to do that? And so when you bring that into the whole ethos of the organization, that's where you can be amazed where the ideas come from, where the initiatives come from, and the outcomes that can happen.
Yeah, definitely. And I love that shift too in opening up the opportunity that leaders can have in an organization. So if someone's watching this as a recording, or they might even be watching live now, and they have just listened to what the example you gave, and they go, yeah, I actually want to do that. I want to shift my focus a little bit. What are some suggestions that you would be giving them to really embrace that and to be able to take that on for themselves?
Well, I think it comes down to what is it that you really want to dare to do. I love the word dare, because it's like that bold ambition. And so first check in with your own purpose. What really lights you up? What drives you? Even some thought-provoking questions about what did you love to do as a child? What's easy for you that's hard for others? What would you do if someone gave you $1 billion? So, the money's no issue. You can spend whatever you want. What would you spend it on? Now, you'll have the house, the cars, the fancy travel, all that covered. There'll still be a lot left over. What would you do with it, right? And then what if you couldn't fail? So again, we've taken risk off the table. So by really reflecting on these sorts of thought-provoking questions, it's amazing what emerges. So that can help you think about what really matters to you. Now, if you're in a position of leadership in an organization or a business unit or a team, then I think it's also about applying that thinking to the work. And why do you do what you do? And keep asking why. And those same questions can apply. What would we do if money was no object? What would we do if we couldn't fail? What problem would we love to solve, right? So thinking through those things can help you really get to the essence of why you exist, what you stand for, and what would amazing look like. And then it's about, well, how do you articulate that in a succinct way? And then how do you show up and live it and role model it? Yeah. So coming back to that house with no bills, when that's the drumbeat, that's what we're striving for, guys. How are we going to do it? That lifts everyone. I mean, there's a nursery that is near my house. And you know those banners that you have outside of schools where they'll say the fete is next Saturday or whatever, that kind of thing, a sign, and the kids go out and change the letters. Well, they have a banner, a big sign like that outside this nursery. And they'll put up when there's a sale and stuff like that. But on the frame at the top, there's a statement that says, enriching people's lives through plants.
Right.
Now, how do you think the people that work at that nursery would show up if that's the ethos, right? Again, it comes back to, you could go to a discount nursery and we're just trying to find the cheapest plants, and that might, that cascades into how you show up. And sure, we all want value for money, but I reckon those people might have a slightly different approach to how they serve their customers, because they know the value that plants have in people's lives, and they might be having different conversations with their customers and maybe bringing more loyalty. And so, whatever you do, it can be, something like that retail, it can be something corporate. It doesn't really matter what it is. I would encourage anyone who's watching or listening to think deeply about this and think about how might you co-design that purpose if you don't have one already, and then how might you live it, and how might you invite people to contribute towards achieving it.
And the examples you've given, what you've talked about, it's consistently that connection between giving and serving, but also that purpose. And I think if I'm correct, what you're consistently saying is the two are so connected. And if we're going to really give and serve and find fulfillment in that, we need to do the work of asking ourselves, what is my purpose as an individual? And then if we're a leader in an organization, ask the question in parallel, what's the purpose of the organization?
Yes.
And that, have you worked, do you have any examples of organisations that you may have worked with that you've seen really practice that?
Well, yes. Let me think. Well, in these innovation sprints, we have to clarify the purpose. And so the one I worked with recently was a global energy company, and it was about accelerating decarbonisation. And you think, well, that's what the whole world's looking for. How are we going to come up with that? But the team actually did. They delved into a big polluting problem, and they came up with a solution that hadn't been thought of before. And so yeah, those are the sort of innovation sprints or boot camps that I work on that always comes into play. I work with so many diverse organisations. There's an artist I worked with in a pro bono capacity, and she was bringing her art to mental health and helping with community and bringing that community connection. And she created this movement called Because, and it was the cause, the BE and the capital C, so Because, and it was about that cause. And we spent some time because she wanted to articulate her purpose more clearly. And typically I find it's 3 sessions that's needed if it's an organisation or an entity to come up with that purpose. There's typically a first session where you talk about what makes a purpose, why, what makes a good one, what makes a bad one, share examples, have some fun with a bit of guessing and matching, that kind of thing. So you kind of have a warm-up, and then you might start some brainstorming. And then the second session, you start to really narrow it down and critique and ideate. So you're starting to really get a feel for, you know, what you're thinking of, but which ones aren't landing, which ones are landing, and sense checking them. And then I encourage the team to get out of the building, and I call it passing the cocktail party test. So you might have a short list of 3, and you want to socialise it and go, hey, if this was our purpose, what would you think? And you want people to kind of lean in and be curious and go, ooh, like the house with no bills. That's a classic one. Where it's like, ooh, what was that? Why? What would that mean? And you start to get these ideas. You don't want people to screw up their face and go, oh, that's a bit odd. You know, it obviously can't give all the answers, but it's about evoking curiosity and interest in a good way, right?
Yeah.
And so then you do that, you socialize it, and then you come back, and typically you'd land it in the 3rd session. And so with this artist that I'm talking about, the purpose statement that she came up with and fell in love with was art together making change. And so it was about, you know, coming together for art, but making change. It's bigger than the art. So that was a beautiful one. I worked with the Institute of Public Administration in Sydney, or New South Wales is the body. But they provide learning and events for the public service professionals in the state. So tens of thousands of public service professionals can have access to the services of this institute. And they didn't really have a clear purpose, and they needed to go through a big transformation. They were very impacted by COVID because all their events were in person. And so again, we ran sessions and came up with the purpose. And it was really digging deep on the why. Why do we do this learning? Why do we do the events? And that's what I find, you've got to keep asking why. And it came down to inspiring public service to enrich society. Because why do we have public service? Well, we you know, we're not just running utilities, and you know, we're doing it for a deeper reason. And so that we eventually landed on that, and everyone felt really good about it, because it's like they're there to enable, to empower these public service professionals to then do something for their communities, for their society. And then what that turned into was a marketing slogan, because that wasn't something that they felt was quite right for externally focused purpose. So engaged an agency, but that internal purpose was what inspired the slogan, which became "You at your best for New South Wales."
Oh, wow.
And it's like a more catchy way of pretty much saying the same thing, right? And so that's a great example, I think, of where they landed on the why, but then it was, okay, how are we then going to communicate it in an enticing way?
Yeah. Oh, there's some amazing examples there of, just incredible. Yeah.
And, this is why I'm so passionate about purpose, because, a lot of people might think, oh, what could 5 words do? You got to have the detailed stuff underneath it. How can you possibly articulate what you do in 5 words? Well, you're not trying to give all the answers, but you're trying to create some kind of statement that inspires, creates curiosity. It might be that destination of, a world free of addiction, or, that's one of the not-for-profits I work with. Or it might be an action, like enriching people's lives through plants. That's like an action, right? You're not sort of saying, is it ever going to get to the destination? That's just the way of being. So there are really 2 flavors of purpose. There's the destination, like the house with no bills, right? That's the destination. That's the goal. Or there's the action.
Yeah. So is there a synergy then, do you think, between, just on that, if that sort of purpose is more the goal, that the giving and serving is the action that we take to live that out, and that's where the integration comes in?
Yes. And I think it's about making it bigger and making it more collective and shared, right? Because you're showing up with that spirit of giving towards this purpose. You are serving. If you're in a leadership role, you're serving others to enable them so that you can scale it, right? And that's where maybe you show up as a coach, as a mentor. There are so many different ways you can show up to give and serve, right? But and again, it doesn't have to be, exactly towards a specific purpose like what I've described. It could be that you just want to empower and inspire ambitious professionals who want to do something purpose-driven. So they may not know what they want to do, but you want to help give them that spark. So it doesn't have to be as specific as some of the examples I've given. Could be more of an ethos to educate, inspire, or empower. And that could be what motivates you. That could be that thing that lights you up, right? That's what I want to do. And, you never know what that could lead to. You might find, years down the track, you find out that little spark that you've given someone leads to them doing something extraordinary. It's like my sister-in-law is a teacher, and she has students come up to her and say, you taught me 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and you inspired me to do this. And, that's just amazing, isn't it, that you've had that impact on so many people?
Yes, yeah. And what an amazing legacy to be able to keep moving on, but have those people come back to you and say, this is the difference you've made for me. Yeah. But
anyone can have that impact, right? You don't have to be a teacher. You can be a colleague.
Yeah. But I think to that, it's showing up in a way that has that perspective of this is more than just me. This is I'm willing. So there's an element of vulnerability, and it does take courage, but it's a willingness to go, I'm open to expanding and bringing others into this with me. And that's where some of this really takes form and builds momentum. Yes,
I think you raise a really good point there about vulnerability, though, Sue, because I think people can feel like, well, people might take advantage of me. Am I going to be exploited in terms of my time or my other resources, right? And that could be a bit of a barrier, coming back to your earlier question about what might stop you showing up.
Yes.
My experience, I find that people are usually pretty respectful. And I've seen some leaders say, well, how can I support you? How can I help you? And you think, oh, that's a very open-ended question. What are you going to get back? But I think typically people will come up with something quite reasonable. And of course, if they do come up with something that is beyond whatever, your resources, your capacity, your, threshold in whatever way, then you just have to say, okay, that's a little beyond my whatever, my threshold, or whatever you want to say, you could point them. You could say, well, maybe you could explore this, or perhaps you need to focus on this first and then go that way. So I think just some wise counsel if you get something back that's perhaps an unreasonable expectation. But typically I think it's not going to be as demanding as you might think, but it also, as I said earlier, it might prompt you to put some more structure and some more intention around how you spend your time so that you do cover the important things.
Which again comes back to purpose in the sense of what is my purpose in a given situation or in a given role, and being able to, because that helps to maybe set some boundaries and take away that risk of, okay, I am willing to give up some of my time, but as long as I keep that purpose in mind in whatever situation I'm in, I'm not going to, or it gives a boundary to then not being taken for granted.
I think so. And, we all wear multiple hats, right? We all have many facets of our identity. We can be a parent, we can be a child looking after an elderly parent, we can be a colleague, a friend, that we've all got multiple hats that we're wearing at any one time. And so we do have to think about all of those hats and how we want to show up and how we want to balance those things. And it's not easy. Time is a finite thing, and we're all struggling to get done what we need to. But I think it's just about being really intentional.
Cherie, we've covered some really interesting ground in terms of the benefits and why people would find value in exploring and embracing giving and serving, and particularly then linking it to purpose, and what some of the ideas that might stop someone embracing that. And then you've given us quite a number of examples of different organisations that you've worked with and what they've done. As we move towards closing the conversation out, is there one takeaway that you would want to leave with people watching this, as to if they wanted to embrace the whole idea of giving and serving, linking it to purpose? What's one takeaway?
I think it would be to maybe, if we come back to the hats, maybe think about giving and serving with that more of that coaching mindset. So you're not doing it for people, you're not giving them in terms of tangible things, you're giving them guidance, you're giving them techniques. It's almost like teach someone to fish and then they'll never go hungry, right? So you're not giving them the fish, you're teaching them to fish. And so showing up as that coach, it can actually mean that you end up spending less time than you needed to if you're in that leadership role, because you're empowering, you're enabling them, and then you're saying, I'm going to step back. I'm not going to micromanage you or give you the exact recipe. I'm going to give you the flavor and give you the outcome, and I'm here if you need me. And then that might be shorter check-ins rather than the typical, more traditional way of briefing people and having those more formal methods in place. So I think it's about having that coaching mindset to showing up and giving and serving. And if I could add another little tiny one at the end.
Yes, go.
Show up as a coach, but practice micro giving. Now, that could just be a kind word. That could be going out of your way and saying thank you. Just those small acts, if again they weave into how you show up, that again is noticed, and that rubs off on people.
And what a great way to put the toe in the water and start building that habit too. I love that micro giving concept. Yeah. Makes it doable, makes it feel, okay, it's not such a big leap. Yeah, for someone
Just
who
a
wants
tiny
to.
thing, and it gives you a bit of
Yeah.
warmth in your day as well. I always remember many years ago, I worked in a company, and there was a colleague, and he told me that sometimes when he drove across the Harbour Bridge, it was $2 then, I think, to drive across the Harbour Bridge. Now it's all e-tags, right? But he would just give an extra $2 sometimes and say, "I'll tell the next person it's covered." And I thought, how cool is that? Like, this complete stranger gets told, that guy in front has just paid for your toll. Now, they'll never meet that, probably never meet that person. They'll never be able to thank him. But it's just like this little lift that you give someone and go, wow, that complete stranger just paid for my toll. Now, you can't do that now with the e-tags, but you could just say, when you're buying a coffee, oh, the next person can have it on me. Or, like, again, like just a little gesture. But typically it would be more intentional about thanking someone or acknowledging something that someone's done. Or even like I stopped at this particular healthy fast food place quite often when I was doing some work in Newcastle, and I was driving back and forth. And there was this lady that worked there that was always so kind. And one day, and she was sweeping and cleaning and doing all the things. And I think she was probably the manager, but she was doing everything. And I just took a moment and went up to her at the end and said, I just want to thank you for what you're doing, because it really makes a difference when we're on the road and we're traveling. And, and I could have easily just walked out, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to go up to her. And she goes, oh, thanks, love. And, that might have made her day,
Yeah.
So what could you do? Just that little micro gift of giving that could just give someone that little lift in their day.
Yeah. No, I love that. Cherie, I want to thank you so much for joining me here and having the conversation. Really rich anecdotes that you've given, examples, conversation. What have you enjoyed most about the conversation that we've had?
Oh, I always enjoy catching up with you, Sue, and we always have a great time together. But I find this integrity game fascinating, actually, and just to see all the elements and how they fit together. I have found that really interesting and fascinating. And I have listened to some of your sessions before today. I haven't been able to join the live ones, but I have listened to some of them. And I think it's really great to have that lens of integrity and think of it as a game, and to show all these pieces and the lacing it up, how it all crisscrosses and links together. I just think that's a really nice model. It's really powerful. So I think it's great that you do what you're doing and you show up every week and run these sessions with no expectation. And that's giving and serving, and that's sharing your passion. And so you are role modeling this. So I think that's wonderful.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that encouragement. And
pleasure.
For anyone who has listened to you, really likes some of the ways that you work with people, what's the best way that they can get in contact with you?
Oh, thank you. Well, I'm the only Cherie Mylordis on LinkedIn, I'm pretty sure. So please connect with me on LinkedIn and drop me a little message. You can have a look at my website, which is nextgenify.com. I'm very active on LinkedIn. I talk a lot about leadership. There's a hot topic at the moment called conscious unbossing that's getting a lot of interest. So I talk a lot about that.
Okay.
So just reach out on LinkedIn. I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah. Okay. And that's your website, isn't it?
Yes,
Nextgenify. Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Beautiful. Yeah. So excellent. Is there anything before we close out? Is there anything else you want to add that you want a takeaway for anyone? No?
I think it's just wonderful to think about giving and serving. It's not something that we might often stop and pause and reflect on. And so I think if you can think about how might you embed this into your rhythm of how you show up, so that it isn't this thing that you go, oh, what am I going to do this month? But it just becomes ingrained. I think that would be really wonderful, and that would create big ripples.
Yeah. And there's something special about that word rhythm. I think it just lends itself to flow and making it part of life. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah. It becomes ingrained in how you show up every day.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you again. I've really enjoyed the conversation that we've had, and look forward to catching up with you soon. So thank you. And I hope people that have been listening, and I've seen some eyeballs coming up on, so there's people out watching, have really enjoyed the conversation.
I hope so. Yes.
Thank
It's a nice way to
you.
spend a Thursday evening. And thank you for joining, everyone.